When you depopulate, you shrink your tax base and you weaken your labor markets. And really, you reduce the need for more housing. And that's what happened in Victoria. That's why Victoria today is the most affordable Australian real estate marketplace. It's why I'm looking in Victoria to buy real estate, because 5 years ago it depopulated and it's now only recovering. Welcome to the Urban Property Investor. I'm your host, Sam Saggers, here to help you crack the code of real estate wealth. Today's show, the domino effect. Yes, I tell you what, I've seen some disturbing stuff, haven't you? The last couple of weeks in the news has really thrown some curveballs, and probably no greater curveball than dictator Dan. Yes, the big-eared pirate himself is in the news, and of course, if you haven't seen it, you've got to Google it. It's got to be one of the most disturbing pictures anyone's ever seen. If you're a staunch capitalist and you thought you were living in a capitalist country, well, then just go Google the photo with Dan Andrews standing next to the North Korean dictator, a man who takes pleasure in blowing up his own citizens, in doing executions. And of course, Dan's in the class photo with none other than Vladimir Putin himself. It really is one of the most disturbing photos you'll ever see a Australian politician being connected to. That the fact that an Australian politician or ex-politician goes to a Red Army march on the main street of Beijing to hang out with the world's megalomaniacs really has blown my mind. And so today I thought I'd do a bit of a show on why marketplaces can be sent sideways for years because of the domino effect. Really, today's show is inspired by the megalomaniac himself, Danny Andrews, the wingnut dictator. So welcome back, regulars. Play the program in double speed, get your life back. Play all the episodes I've done are lessons on real estate, so feel free to go back in time. But hey, you know the drill. Make sure you share the episode with some friends and family, and we want some reviews. Now, I got a review. Milano, thank you for the review. I appreciate you doing that. Very, very kind to say that. Yeah, you know, I try and turn real estate into a bit of an art form of learning. And of course, if you haven't done it yet, please grab my book, The Australian Property Game. It's Amazon based. So it's nice and easy to order, print on demand. It'll be at your house in a few minutes, usually the next day. But the book goes through concepts around what I'm going to explore today, which is really that there are some factors you need to consider when you're a property investor. At the end of the day, we property investors, we just want to make a little bit of money, get ahead in this world, get to the end of our life with more than we started at the beginning of our life. We are just trying to save a few bucks, make the world a better place, and of course, along the way, keep a few bucks so that when we finally stop working, we can look after ourselves and sleep at night and not end up in a place where, you know, we're stressed constantly about money. We want to lessen the burden on the system. Of course, the system is too many pensioners, too many people on the pension, not able to look after themselves financially in retirement. And we don't want to be that statistic. So that's why we property invest. It's usually that simple as to why we care so much about real estate. But real estate can be derailed from certain dominoes. And the first domino, without question, is the domino of politicians. and in particular, dictators. Now, I didn't come up with the name Dictator Dan. Other people did that. And of course, you may love Danny Andrews and what he stood for and what he stands for today. You may not be repulsed like I am that Dan Andrews is standing next to effectively the North Korean leader that enslaves millions of people into a ideology where they are under threat constantly. That may not be abhorrent to you, but I can tell you that is not what I'm about. I'm about free market capitalism. I'm about lessening the burden on the system, not letting the system dictate how we live. But of course, Dictator Dan is one of the reasons today that Victoria missed a huge property boom. And for Victorians, the wealth effect has not unfolded for them for 10 years. The wealth effect has unfolded in New South Wales, in South Australia, in Western Australia, in Queensland. People have made money. We're all happy. We've got states with great credit ratings, and we've all done well, particularly if we've been little capitalists. We've done well if we've invested in real estate. You could have bought a property 5 years ago in New South Wales, it would have gone up. In Western Australia, it probably would have doubled. Queensland would have doubled. South Australia, it would have doubled. And of course, if you bought a property over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years in Victoria, nothing has happened. And one could argue when you do have a dictator, a megalomaniac in charge of your economy, you are not going to see growth in your economy. When you think about all of the dictators that have lived on this planet, most of them have not actually left their economy better off. You could go back to Suharto in Indonesia, who ruled with a pretty ruthless iron thumb. Other than him and his mates getting wealthy, the rest of Indonesia today is still pretty well, for the most part, in large amounts of poverty, still all these years later. You could think of the Cubans. I mean, Cuba is a fascinating country. There's not enough food to go around most days. It's pretty mind-blowing that today still dictatorship kind of runs that country, and it can't even feed itself in a world that is effectively so plentiful with stuff today. And of course, dictators from, the North Korean leader himself, the amount of problems happening in that country, it is not exactly an economic powerhouse. Even when you think of, Russia, of course, it's a huge, vast landscape, but it doesn't necessarily have a strong economy. There are exceptions to the rule, places like Singapore, which ended up having a continuous level of governance, not from a hardline dictator, but from a, more organized kind of, political concept, more authoritarian. You ended up in a place where that economy is doing well. And of course, China, it's ruled with a pretty, single political party. And, that those long years of tenure, if done right, you can see that economies, can gather strength behind the conversation of not changing leaders every 5 minutes. But for the most part, 95% of dictators mess up their economy. And they do it because they create this domino effect of stuff not working. And eventually, when they're tossed out and chased out of town, and let's face it, Danny Andrews, the wingnut dictator, was chased out of town. I mean, what premier of a state falls off a ladder fixing their roof? Like, come on. He obviously got shoved because he was causing too much damage to that state. And someone took care of him and moved him on. And, I wouldn't be suspected if ASIO's phone tapping Dan Andrews right now, because you cannot be like that crazy to be in a photo with the world's scariest people. So Dictator Dan kind of did a number on the Victorian economy, and obviously a lot of people, reference COVID and so forth. He was pretty, harsh during that period, but there were certainly other things which he just wasted a lot of money. If you think about it, if right now there was a games inside of Victoria, the Commonwealth Games, and Victorians were celebrating their amazing state, the amount of spin-off effect for businesses and people and sentiment, I can guarantee you the property market in Victoria would be a lot more than what it is today. But of course, Dan just ripped up $1 billion with creating the idea, then giving up on the idea, creating task forces about nothing. And of course, this is the way of the dictator. They do it their way. It's their way or the highway. And so I think the first domino is making sure your real estate is not connected to dictators. Fortunately, those days are over for Victoria. And look, as an opportunist, I can tell you, when I'm looking at real estate, I'm looking at the Victorian real estate market at the moment because I'm just seeing great value because of what Dictator Dan did. He's gone now, so let's all move on. But certainly for Victorians, the sad part is they did miss out on the COVID wealth effect. And, unless they were investing interstate, just as homeowners, they did not see their real estate grow all that much. Now, the next domino to consider that kind of derails a real estate marketplace is deindustrialization. And again, this is why most experts will just tell you, please don't go to a single market economy. If that economy deindustrializes, it's over. It is over. And a decline in an industry, a decline in the workforce, redundancies, and wage erosion just kills a marketplace. Sends it sideways for years and years and years and years and years. And we've seen deindustrialization unfold. You just have to go back to the mining boom and really, certain areas had a lot of construction workers, didn't need them anymore. And all of a sudden you had deindustrialization of construction. You're effectively a reduce of industry leaving a community, and it had a devastating effect on property values. So when you're analyzing, regional marketplaces that have one or two industries, be very, 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 very mindful. What if that industry ends? What if that industry changes the way it does something? What if that industry is no longer? Now, as a real example happening, I was talking to one of my neighbours, one of my good neighbours, not that bloody Gospodar and Dodek. No, I was speaking to my good neighbour, Amanda. And yes, Amanda has a real name, and she is my friend. I have a neighbour friend. I know you never thought I could say that, but it's true. She's working on some secret stuff at the moment. I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but, it's happening. It's happening. There's deindustrialization happening in the Upper Hunter Valley. It is public knowledge that BHP is shutting its Mount Arthur coal mine. So when a community is relying on an industry and the industry shuts, the community is in trouble. And deindustrialization is happening there. Like, the industry is ending. The coal mine is ending. And the challenge is a lot of the people in places like Muswellbrook, which is probably going to be the most impacted place up there, have both incomes connected to the single industry. So you've got, mum and dad both working for the company that is connected to the coal mine or logistically connected to that coal mine. And of course, because mining pays very, very well as an industry, the false economy for the people in that community is that once that industry goes, they will never earn that amount of money again because there is no industry that pays like that to replace it. And so when you start to lose the erosion of wages, you have a downward spiraling effect on real estate values. And, it's estimated that the Mount Arthur mine is going to close in 2030. And there's like 3,000 or 4,000 people that work directly for the mine, but the spin-off jobs is like 20,000 people. So 20,000 people all making a buck from a single industry, which is not going to be replaced. So you have to question what the future value of real estate is in the Upper Hunter in Muswellbrook. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but it'll be interesting to find out in a couple of years whether the property values go south because the domino is falling. The domino is falling. And, again, like, you just got to question yourself, like, what kind of industry am I investing in? What kind of town am I investing in? Because when things change, it gets pretty real. Now, you could argue as well, like one of the reasons we are in a marketplace which is hard to produce stock is we've actually not put enough effort into industrializing our labor force when it comes to building stuff. We've kind of deindustrialized building. There's not enough builders. Today, a bricklayer can, if they're a really strong and fast bricklayer, now admittedly, that's a pretty tough job. It's probably going to, the lifespan of doing that work would be questionable. But, if you just 1 year being a brickie versus 1 year being a dental surgeon, who do you think is going to make more money? Well, the brickie. The brickie can make a bucket load of money at the moment. And, why? Because there's not enough builders. There's not enough laborers. There's not enough people to build Australia. And when you start to not invest in industry and you don't set the dominoes up right, it's a house of cards. And, today it's just not set up right. We've got to fix a lot of things. I was listening to someone commentate on, if you fail your driver's test as a young person, it takes 3 months to get another test. Now, if you're 18 years old and you want a job as a chippy, you need a car. But if you fail your license, you can't get the job and you got to wait 3 months to do it again. The productivity just falls away. And so in some respects, Australia's deindustrialized its building space, and really it erodes the skill space. That's the point of the conversation. It erodes the skill space. Now, in the Upper Hunter, there's obviously the skill of coal mining. That skill is being eroded. So can that skill transfer to other things and get paid the same amount of money? Maybe over in the iron ore space, but maybe you're going to have to leave Muswellbrook to go and achieve that. And this is where the next domino is: depopulation. Depopulation is not good for real estate. Now, think about Victoria under Dictator Dan, the wingnut dictator who hangs out with Kim Il-sung, who hangs out with Vladimir Putin, who enjoys the company of the Red Army. Dictator Dan was a unpopular dictator, and as such, people left Victoria. And of course, Victoria has a huge amount of people usually arriving to it. So it's not uncommon for people to leave Victoria. It's more common for more people to come to Victoria and for the state to be a high growth place. But during COVID, obviously the borders were shut, so people couldn't go to Victoria, people couldn't immigrate, and so people left, and a lot of people left to Queensland. Now that's basically now sort of slowed up and virtually stopped. People are staying in Victoria, and actually Victoria is gaining people now. But when you depopulate, you shrink your tax base and you weaken your labor markets. And really, you reduce the need for more housing. And that's what happened in Victoria. That's why Victoria today is the most affordable Australian real estate marketplace. It's why I'm looking in Victoria to buy real estate, because 5 years ago it depopulated and it's now only recovering. We're actually leaving the effects of dictator Dan and the effects of depopulation finally 5-6 years later. So you can imagine how, and dictator Dan was only around for 2 terms of government. You can imagine how long a dictator who's been in for 50 years, just how much time thereafter it takes to fix those places. And so when you get sort of this economic outflow, it really kills confidence. And Victoria went through that. It killed the confidence of Victorians. Like they were shattered. Like a lot of them still have trauma. Like you speak to them and they're still like got trauma from that period. Confidence was shattered. And of course, depopulation leads to population growth somewhere else. And of course, you see the opposite, right? So you had confidence killed in Victoria and confidence gained in Queensland. You had reduced housing demand in Victoria and increased housing demand in Queensland. You had a shrinking tax base in Victoria and an accelerating tax base in Queensland. You had weaker labour markets in Victoria and not enough jobs in Queensland. So like you literally like you had an inversion of each other. And so Muswellbrook, going back to Muswellbrook, I may depopulate. This sort of last time I looked, which was a long time ago, there was like 12 or 13,000 people in Muswellbrook. It was a really beautiful place. It's got the chance to get into agriculture, viticulture, that kind of stuff. But I don't think viticulture pays to coal miner wages. So people will depopulate. People will go, well, my skill set is coal mining. Where is a coal mine? I need to go there. My skill set is mining. I'm going to go to live in Western Australia. And so you're going to see, it's just an example. Like it could be an industry not around mining. It could be an industry around cotton. It could be an industry around, tourism. When something ends and it deindustrializes, it depopulates. And eventually you get this kind of outflow, which really damages confidence. And so, you just got to be really, really mindful of what's going on. And look, I'd love to fix Australia's problems. I know there's articles now that Indian business people, entrepreneurs from India are like, well, if you can't build 1 million houses, we can. We'll send our skilled labor there. We've got no shortage of, skilled people here. We'll knock up your houses in no time. And of course, it's approached the United Arab Emirates for a fund that would get a return on building Australia's houses. That's how deindustrialized Australia has become. Now, you Google it, It's not. It's there's articles out there. India in deep negotiations to help build 1 million homes. You go Google it. Now, obviously, I don't think it'll ever happen because the unions would kick up a massive fuss, and probably everyone would. But this is where it's come to because we've eroded our skill base around that industry. And of course, really, when it comes to another domino as to why an area won't grow in value, it's disinvestment. If an area just does not get the investment, it lacks social cohesion. It lacks a future. And this is why we harp on about PI, population, infrastructure, and employment. That is social cohesion. And again, like if you can find an area which is disinvested, where there's a lack of investment, it's probably going to have a lower growth rate than somewhere which is full of future investment, full of current investment, or full of social cohesion. And really, when I invest, I never invest in places which are full of disinvestment. They may be cheap, but what is the social cohesion like? What is the investment strategy for a place? Does it even have an investment strategy? And again, like you are starting to see even here in Australia now, like certain local governments are going broke. Where does that leave future investment? Where does that leave social cohesion if your local council's running out of money? And so we've just got to be very mindful that from an investment perspective, we want investment connected to our real estate, not disinvestment. Disinvestment will create a lower rate of growth. Disinvestment can be people as to why people depopulate an area. If it's got nothing going for it, nothing being built in it, it's got a lack of social cohesion, it's going to depopulate eventually. And it's going to be less people wanting to live there and more people trying to escape there. So you've just got to play it out. And again, these are the dominoes to look out for as to why certain real estate won't do well. I think the other one is debt. Now, when you look at a suburbs profile, what you're really looking for is a large amount of people who have low amounts of debt, a low debt suburb. When you analyze a real estate marketplace, if there's high amount of proportion of owner occupiers living in a suburb, they've either paid off debt or they're paying down debt. When you just get a suburb of renters, you've got too much debt for a neighborhood. And, that can create with it a domino, which can cause real challenges for growth. If you are just in a neighborhood where really no one's paying down debt, no one's looking after the community, and there's no equity being created from locals, and you're connected to too much of a tenant market profile, it's very, very hard for the real estate market to do its thing. So there you have it, guys. That's the dominoes. The dictator himself, the wingnut dictator. You don't want your real estate to be connected to people like that. And, if I said that 5 years ago, I probably would have been, abused. But let's look, now we can look back in hindsight and go, who was this human being? This guy is a serious, serious lunatic if he thinks it's okay to, get in a class photo with Vladimir Putin. I just think, and I know some of the world leaders have to do this kind of kowtow kind of thing at the G20 and things like that. I get it. There's some diplomacy there, but this is a private citizen now going to a Red Army march. This ain't the G20. So the dictatorship, the debt, the depopulation, the deindustrialization, and the disinvestment, these are signals to watch out for. And so when, you're speaking to people and they're like, mate, like that pace doesn't look the best, doesn't feel the best, there's a lot of disinvestment, it will hold your real estate back. If you're in a small community and, just 500 people leaving can mathematically change the economics of a place, the reason people are saying be mindful of that, it's because it will hold you back. If an industry shutdowns, it will hold you back. If local governance, which is really the dictated conversation here, if governance is not good around your community, it will hold your investment back. And again, we just got to be mindful of the dominoes. So hopefully that was helpful. I'll talk again soon. Catch you on the next show. Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Property Investor. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube so you never miss an episode. I'd love for you to rate the show and share it with your family and friends. Let's spread the word about property investing. Stay connected between episodes on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And check out the rest of our podcast network at positivementor.com.au. And if you're serious about growing your property portfolio, don't miss our complimentary Property Investor Nights. Register now via the link in the show notes. See you next time.